in Halacha. But I just want to say two introductory comments. The first introductory comment is on the word magic. See, when I say magic, when any of us hear when I hear the word magic, and I'm guessing for you as well, we really think about an illusionist. Like there's a guy at some point with a wand. If it's a children's party, then he's got a nice little, and that's not magic. That's just somebody working very quickly, and a sleight of hand, making us believe that something happened. That's when we hear the word magic. When you hear the word magic show, when we hear about the magic circle, we're talking about that. We're not talking about magic that is this real creation of something, but we're talking about very skilled people that can move quickly, that can make you look there whilst they do something over here. That's what we think of. So we're going to be spending the first part of our lesson talking about magic, but not in the way that we talk about magic today, optical illusions, but really some sort of force that's doing stuff for real. Real magic. Sort of this wasn't here, and then it makes something appears.
Like creating a golem.
Exactly. I'm not sure we're going to talk about a golem.
Turning your guards into Budweiser.
What is it?
Turning your guards into Budweiser.
For example, yeah, that's really quite specific, but yes, we'll do that.
It's supposed to be a joke about a Budweiser commercial that there was a magician that was able to turn anything into the beer Budweiser. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for that, Ezra. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the first part of the shir, looking at some older sources. We're starting from the Psukim and then the Gemara and then the Shulchan Aruch, even the Shulchan Aruch, talking about the magic, but is ancient magic. And then the second part of the shiur, the practical halachic piece, we'll be talking about the magic shows today. Because as we all discover, real magic is a big problem. And because real magic is a problem, then maybe calling something a magic show, even though it's not really magic, could be a problem too. And we're going to discuss that. You follow?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to start with Psukim. The very first pasuk is from Parashat Shoftim. There's only one source. There's two sources. Yes, look at that. My gosh. You superstar. Shemot. That was quite a good start. Shemot chapter 22. The Torah is taught. Yes.
When you say magic, it's like that very hard magic. It's like in the Egypt, like Kishuf,
Kishufim, exactly.
or like the lighters one.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. You could not have said a better question to start our discussion, because exactly that word, kishuf. The Torah tells us mechashefa. Mechashefa is being translated in different ways, but it's not like a sorceress or like somebody who's involved in magic.
A warlock.
Huh?
A warlock.
A who?
A warlock.
A warlock. I don't know what that is.
It's a warlock.
It's a particular kind of magician.
Okay, good. Them. Thank you so much.
Especially in England.
Excellent. Oh, why especially in England?
It's a druid.
Oh, a druid. Yeah, I've heard of them. Oh, excellent. There you are. Lo
It's a warlock?
Yeah.
The druid?
Druid is a warlock?
Interesting.
techayeh. Lo techayeh.
More in tune with nature. Warlocks are more in tune with like the dead.
Voila.
Okay, we're not gonna. This won't be the. We're going to talk about somebody who's involved in magic. Somebody who's involved in sorcery. Lo techayeh means they will not be tolerated. We're not going to have in the world people that engage in magic. If real magic takes place in the world, that's chaos, and we will not tolerate it, says the Torah. It's interesting because the concept of a mechashefa is a very mystical sort. We don't really understand these things. Mystical sort of topic. Parashat Mishpatim, in which this law appears, is a very practical parasha, talking about damages. If my ox causes your ox, or if you have an eved, this is when to release an eved. All the laws of interpersonal relationships. It's interesting that this law concerning wizardry appears in this very practical parasha, Parashat Mishpatim, but that's what the Torah tells us. Mechashefa lo techayeh. There is a problem with magic. The Torah does not tolerate magic. Okay, so we're going to look at what that might mean. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, source number 2. Lama nikra sheman kashefim. Why is it called magic? And then the Gemara tells us shemach chishin pamalia shel ma'ala. The reason why magic is bad, mechashefa, is connected, although it's not exactly the same word, but mechashefa, you can even hear the ring of the word. Mechashefa sounds similar to the word hachchasha. Mechashefa, hachchasha. Lahachchish in modern Hebrew is the in ancient Hebrew as well, is to contradict. So somehow the forces of magic go against the forces of the way that God wants to run the world. Magic will force the world into a direction which is not the direction of nature or hashkacha pratik, divine inspiration. So it's sort of going against God's will. Do you understand that? It's a very, very difficult concept to understand. I must also add that we're really discussing an idea that is not something that we live with today. When we, as I mentioned in the introduction, when we think about magic, we're not thinking about these people, a sorcerer or a druid. We're thinking about a children's party or an adult entertainer who's able to do things very quickly. That's not magic. That's just a very talented person who can move quickly. But we don't live in a world where there is real magic. But that magic, were we to be living in that world, that magic goes against the divine will. And that is why the Torah will not tolerate magic. This is what the Talmud says to explain the ruling of the mitzvah in the Torah. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay. The Gemara, it's all in the last perek of Masechet Sanhedrin, which is where this appears. Okay. Now, this is interesting, as we're really going to elaborate on this later on, but there are different types of magic. Hilchot kashefim kehilchot Shabbat. The laws of magic are similar to the laws of Shabbat. Now,
Stoned?
what?
You get stoned?
No. Oh, yes. Well, yeah, that is true. But what he means to say is there are different categories. Yesh mehen beskila. There are some activities, magic activities, that are punishable by death. V'yesh mehen patura valasur. Other things are allowed, but they're not. You shouldn't do them. There's no punishment for it, but were you to do it, you'd be doing something inappropriate, but you wouldn't be doing a punishable offense. So it's wrong, but it's not punishable. And there's also a category, sheyesh mehen mutar lechatchila. There's other types of activities that are absolutely forbidden. So what does he mean? Ha'oseh ma'aseh. If somebody does an act of magic, now it's very hard for us to understand that, because I don't know what an act of magic is, but we're going to see soon. The Gemara is going to tell us really a story of an act of magic. But if a person did an act of magic, that is punishable by death. Mechashefa lo techayeh. We can't contradict the divine plan. We can't circumvent the divine will through magic. And were you to do that, the punishment for doing that would be death. Yes, David.
We have stories in Tanakh, and I think also even modern stories. For example, I think it was in Melachim when Eliyahu Navi, he's like I don't know, probably it's not magic, but like he's multiplying flour or oil. And
so we're going to talk about this. There's different types, meaning magic is one type of sort of creating. Let's continue with the Gemara. You'll be happy in a minute. That's to be involved in magic, that is machish, that is forbidden. Okay? However, yesh mihen patur aval asur. It's wrong, but it's not punishable. And this is really why magic shows might be a problem. Do you know what? It's wrong, but it's not punishable. It's to give the impression that you're doing magic, but you're not doing magic. So to make something disappear, well, it's really a magic trick, really. To make something disappear, to make something appear, to give the impression that you're doing magic, when in fact you're not doing magic, that is forbidden, but it's not punishable, because really, you didn't actually do anything. You follow? Okay, that was the second category. And the third category, and this is really to answer your question, and there are other things that are mutar lechatchila, other types of influencing that are absolutely permitted. And we're going to talk about this.
Is it in source 4?
Source number 3, the last
3, okay.
line of source number 3, telling a story of Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Oshaya. Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Oshaya, kol male shabta. Every Friday, havu aske behilchot yitzira. They were involved in magic. Well, not magic, no, hilchot yitzira. We're going to talk about, let's come back to that word in a minute. Hilchot yitzira. They were involved in the laws of creation. And we'll talk about what they were doing. Umibri lehu, and they created igla tilta. They would create a young calf, like a 3 months old, which was the most tender meat. So they would use their creative laws to create out of nothing a calf, and then do you know what they would do? They would slaughter it and then eat it on Shabbat. You ever heard that story? And that explains the Gemara, absolutely permitted. Now this is a bit confusing because it's very difficult to understand the difference between category number 1, which is machashefa lot chaya, machashefa, that's kishuf. Kishuf is magic that contradicts the divine will, and then hilchot yitzira, that is absolutely permitted. Now, there are 3 categories that we're discussing, and really the only one that we have today is number 2. The first one is magic. That's kishuf, and that's absolutely forbidden. That's contradicting the divine will, and that's punishable by death. That's one category. And then there is creativity using hilchot yitzira, but we need to understand what that means. But using the laws of creation, and if I work within the laws of creation, and we see that Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Oshia did so, that's absolutely permitted. Now, those 2 extremes don't exist today. The only thing that really does exist is the middle one, and that is optical illusions. That is wrong but not punishable. It's wrong because people might think you're doing magic. You follow? Yes.
And this law applies only to the Jewish people, right?
Correct. Yeah.
What's the punish for performing magic?
So he just says it's patur. There's no punishment. It is.
But I heard death punishment earlier.
So there's a punishment for magic.
Okay.
That is contradicting the divine will. That is real magic.
So it's but to study magic, is it allowed or?
To study magic.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Before you get to the magic, you have to study it, how to do it, how to perform it. Is it permissible to study it?
So my assumption, but maybe I'm wrong here, is that there isn't magic nowadays.
Okay.
Meaning I could study, but whatever I would be doing is I would be learning sleight of hand.
All right. And can we assume that the dean are studying magic as well?
The who is?
The dean, the judges, they are studying magic as well?
So the truth is, we're going to see in a later source how the assumption seems to be that real magic and real Sefer Yetzirah do not exist nowadays. Those 2 extremes, and that's really why we're discussing it now, but it's not a big relevant halachic topic today. That first category of kishuf, that is creating something in a magic, that sort of process doesn't exist anymore. And likewise, a hilchot yitzira also doesn't exist today. You don't find great people creating animals out of nothing in order to shech them and to eat them. So it worked at the time of the Talmud, but the assumption is that neither of those two exist nowadays.
Sorry, because I'm just wondering if it's forbidden to perform magic. I'm just wondering if it is punishable by death somehow. How is the judges able to punish them with death if they don't know how to perform magic?
They of the time then, of course they did know it then. Nowadays, obviously the Sanhedrin who would punish somebody with death, they would be familiar with whether they're performing magic or not. Really, I know it's not a practical topic, but I want to spend a few minutes just discussing, as best as we can understand, the difference between kishuf, which is magic and forbidden, and hilchot yitzirah, that is permitted. You mean wise? What's the difference between those two? Yes, you can ask.
You say today that doesn't exist magic today.
So if we have a look, the Bet Yosef suggests that we don't use.
Because I think there are people who use like blood and spirits, and if you call it magic, I'm talking about religions or some people, and what was stronger at the time of Moshe, but today it is. And how can?
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure what to say on that. I'll tell you what I think for myself. I personally don't think that there's magic, like magic. Don't really believe in that today myself. However, it did exist. It is something that could potentially exist, and it's important, I think, to study this topic because we realize that the world is bigger than we thought it might be. Do you understand what I'm? Sometimes it's sort of in the very rational world in which we live today, we assume what I see is what there is. And it's useful when we learn a topic like this for us to understand that the world is bigger than what we observe. You can't take it too far and sort of get involved in the world of spirits that really is not a world in which we can live. But it's quite stabilizing for us to understand the world is much bigger and much more complicated than the world that we see, and that we're not rationalists who require evidence. You have to be able to see it in order to know that it's there. It may not be practical magic nowadays, but the concept is true. The Gemara takes it very seriously. Yeah. It's not something they say, well, it's just Bubba Mices. Yes?
I heard stories in India. There are special monks who call the spirits who are dead. And they speak through certain people. They would possess them, and they would speak certain things that happen to them.
That's amazing. Well, we know in Sefer Shmuel, we see Shmuel HaNavi does that for Shaul. It's not a...
Well, Shmuel does it not, but Shmuel is called up by...
Shmuel is called, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. Okay. Shmuel is called by Shaul. Shaul speaks to Shmuel after Shmuel has left this world.
A lot of people getting possessed by certain spirits, and you call some people, like it happens in Hinduism, Christianity, and Muslims, everywhere.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's true. It's not... we'll get to the Bet Yosef to say how we today look at it. But before we get to how we look at it today, really the first thing I'd like to discuss is the difference between this Hilchot Yetzirah and Kishuf. Kishuf, bad, Hilchot Yetzirah, good. What's the difference between them? And then we'll talk about how we view the world today. Yes?
Maybe I missed this. What exactly is defined as magic, like what's called? Mechashe?
Mechashefa.
Okay.
Yeah.
What exactly? How do we define this? Like, what kind of magic?
So the truth. We're going to see that in the Sefer Chinuch. It's really bringing something out of. It's like creating something.
So that's the same thing as Yetzirah, then, no?
Yeah, but there are different types of Yetzirah. Let's jump. The truth is, you haven't got the source sheet so much, so we can jump. Let's jump. Really, to answer your question, then we'll come back to where we were up to. Mm-hmm. If you look, if anyone's got the source sheet, on the second page, source number 9. Anyone blessed with source number 9?
I got number.
So Sefer Chinuch, as you all know, is a book of mitzvot on the mitzvah that we looked at earlier from Mishpatim Mechashefa Lo Techayeh. The Sefer Chinuch elaborates a little bit about what is magic. Let me read to you a little bit of what he says. Ve'inyan hakishuv, magic, hu lefi da'ati ken, this is what I think it is. Shashem Baruch Hu שם בתחילת הבריאה לכל דבר ודבר מדברי העולם טבע לפעול פעולתו טובה וישרה לטובת בני אדם אשר ברא וציווה כל אחד לפעול פועלו למינהו כמו שכתוב בפרשת בראשית למינהו על הנבראים וגם על כל אחד המשיל כוח מלמעלה להכריחו מעשהו כמו שאמרו אין לך עשב מלמטה שאין לו מזל מלמעלה שאומר לו גדל. Okay, this is what God, the Sefer Chinuch is saying, that when God created the world, everything in the physical world has a corresponding angel in the world to come. The Midrash tells us that when God, based on the verse that God created the world, everything was created leminehu. Leminehu is from the word in its kind, exactly. On those words, the Midrash explains that every kind, every species, every type of organism that lives in this world has an angel in heaven telling it to grow. And he quotes the Midrash, you probably know this Midrash, the Midrash that tells us every blade of grass in this world has got an angel in heaven guiding that blade of grass, telling it to grow. It means to say every living thing has an angel. You follow? And that's based on the word leminehu. Leminehu according to their species. Is that clear? Okay. Now, the Sefer Chinuch connects magic to the idea of crossbreeding. I'm going to discuss crossbreeding and then we're going to come back to magic. What happens when I take, and the Torah tells us we're not allowed to do this, what happens when I take an orange and I take a lemon and I mix them together and I create a new fruit? Right? So that, for create a new, like you make a seed, you plant it in the ground, there's a tree. This tree is not an orange tree, and this tree is not a lemon tree. It's a new tree that never existed before. So it means this tree, Shalom Aleichem. Does anyone, Nachon, you notice, Eov? Nachon?
Oh, please, Rob, please.
Oh my gosh, it was just amazing. Unbelievable. Welcome to, pleasure to see you. So it means, we're talking about magic. The Sefer Chinuch says that for this new tree, that's not an orange tree or not a lemon tree, there is no min. It's not one of the types that God put into the world. Because God created all the species in Gan Eden, and now we have created a new species. This species is not one of the minehu, not one of the types that God spoke about in creating the world, which means that this tree doesn't have the angel above saying grow, because it's not.
How does it grow then?
Huh?
How does it then grow? We can see it in nature that those kind of trees exist.
Yeah,
grow.
it's true. They do work. It works.
So how do they grow?
So the
angel above them.
Excellent question. So the Sefer Chinuch says that's why the Torah tells us that we're not allowed to do it. It happens because God gave us free will, and like if that's sort of how something is naturally going to happen, it will happen. But the reason why the Torah told us not to do that is because we're creating something that will now be outside of the minim that God created. You follow? The idea, let me just finish. The idea of magic, according to the Sefer Chinuch, is the same concept. I'm not working within God's system, but I'm working outside of God's system. You follow? That makes sense? That's how he explains magic. And then we're going to explain Sefer Yetzirah in a minute. Yes, Ben.
What about GMOs?
Who?
GMOs.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like genetically modified food.
Yes, that's a problem.
Wait, why is it Mutar?
Huh?
Is it mutar?
So in halacha, you're not allowed to create. The problem is the creative act. There's nothing wrong with the fruit, meaning if I mix, I'm allowed to eat it afterwards. The problem is the mixer, but the result of that mix is not forbidden. I'm allowed to benefit from something that was created in that manner. I'm just not allowed to create it. More than that, in halacha, the Rambam says this in Hilchot Kilayim. Really, we're not talking about kilayim at the moment. We're talking about magic. It's just the Sefer Chinuch uses the concept of kilayim, which is crossbreeding. He uses the concept of crossbreeding for us to understand in a term that we can relate to, in words that we can relate with, to understand the concept of magic. So the Isur is to be the one that does the crossbreeding. But let's say this tree grows and there's a fruit, and then that fruit has got a seed. And then when I plant that seed, it's going to create another tree like this. I'm allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to create the first tree. You follow? That's what's forbidden. But once that thing exists, the problem is the creation of it. It's not a problem to subsequently utilize it. I just want to read a few more lines in it, what he says over here. Okay. There's a bit of an issue on that. נמצא שביטלה, אוקיי, one second. על כן, נמנעו מלעלות על רוחנו, אף כי נעשה בידינו דבר שמראה בנו רצון להחליף דבר במעשה הקל. It looks like we're trying to change something that God created. ואפשר שיעלה בידינו מזה רמז משום שכלי זרעים ובהמה ושענס. ובמקומם נעריך בם בעזרת השם, וזהו שאמרו זיכרונם לברכה, למה נקרא שמם כשפים שמכחישים פמליה של מעלה ושל מטה? כלומר, שכוחן עולה לפי שעה יותר מכוח הממונים עליהם. Maybe this answers your question. שכוחן, this moment that I crossbreed or that I get involved with magic, so kochan, the koch down here on earth, is greater than the angels for them above us, because I'm doing something outside of the jurisdiction of those angels. You follow? Meaning, my role is to letapeach. Letapeach, it means to like look after the grass. You know, there's an angel looking on each piece of blades of grass, telling it to grow. And then when I give that blade of grass powers beyond what it was supposed to do, then I'm contradicting the divine plan. Is that clear? Now, I just want to, I don't know what the word is. I want to sort of bracket this statement. It's very difficult for us to understand what this means, because we live in a world in which magic, apart from perhaps in India, but this isn't something that we live with every day. So he's trying to explain to us in a post-magic world what might be a problem with magic.
Cohn, what about chemistry? Because you're basically making the chemicals do things that they weren't doing.
Oh, excellent question. So what's the if you remember, we said this.
Are you saying medicine is illegal?
No, there's a difference between machashefa kishuf and hilchot yetzira. We are allowed to be creative. We remember the story we read about Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Yoshia, who created through Sefer HaYetzirah, created a calf. Now, what's the difference between the two? So, I want to explain a little bit about the Sefer Yetzirah. I really don't understand it very much. Sefer Yetzirah is the book of creation. It's like a recipe book to create things in this world. But it's based on a principle. And the principle is fascinating. And I think we can understand a little bit of the principle, although we can't apply it. There is, in the Hebrew language, every letter has got significance. There is a concept, a Kabbalistic concept known as Galgal Alpha Beta. Galgal is like the cycle of the Aleph Bet. And what it means is that the letters of the Hebrew language have so much significance that the Hebrew word for something is the recipe for it. So, for example, how do I make a cup? You take the letter of the word kaf and the letter of the letter vav and samach and put them together, And it's not that this is called a kos, but rather this is a combination of the letters kaf, vav, samach. You follow? Now, when I internalize that fully, that is Hilchot Yetzirah. You follow? I'll give you one example. It doesn't. You know that the word for a hand is yad. The Gemara, which is a yud and a daled 14. Does anyone know how many joints we have on my hands?
14.
Excellent. Very good. And the reason why it's 14 is because it is yad, which is 14. You follow? So it's not called a yad. It is a yad. It is combining the letter yud and the letter daled. Together I create this thing called a yad. You follow? So the Hebrew name for an item isn't just a random word that developed with the language. It's the essence of that thing. Does that make sense to you?
I saw it very interesting. I don't know how legitimate this is, but if it is, it's incredible. In a book by Rabbi Cohn, where he says that they did test with spectrograms of audio, where it shows like the sound waves that what it actually looks like when certain words are said, and said that and showed pictures that when you say the names of the Hebrew the alphabet, the picture of the spectrogram actually looks like the letter.
That's amazing.
I saw this, and when you say like the American, like the English alphabet, it totally looks like something else. When you say the letters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, it like looks like the letter, and I saw that, I was blown away.
Oh, that is exactly.
The sound wave like actually looks like the letter.
That exactly. So that there's. I mean, what certainly becomes clear to us is the world is much deeper than we think it is. That's obvious. I mean, and that's really one of the important takeaways from our discussion today. We don't use this Hilchot Yetzirah nowadays, but that is what Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Yoshia were doing when they created this calf. They weren't doing magic, which is crossbreed, like to create something new. They were bringing together the letters in order to create something, but they're working within the system as opposed to circumventing the system. Does that make sense to you? So Sefer Yetzirah is absolutely permitted. If we knew how to do it, it would be absolutely permitted because I'm working within God's system. I'm combining the letters to create whatever it is I want to make. Kishuf, magic, is going against Machchishin, Pamalia Shel Mala. It's contradicting the God will. I'm trying to circumvent the way that God created the world, and although it's difficult for us to understand the Sefer HaChinuch's analogy because we live in a much more, sort of like physical and much less, perhaps less spiritual reference points are more difficult for us to get. But I think we can even understand it. What were you going to say?
To our detriment.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Another question.
Yes, Yosef.
Is this different, Ralph, from the alchemy, or is it the same with the alchemy? Because alchemy, I believe, is a combination of magic and science. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I know alchemy was a big deal in the 18th and 19th century.
But I hear from my rabbi in Philippines that alchemies come from the Kabbalah.
Chaim Vital studied alchemy, I believe.
He studied it.
Yes.
Really?
That's about all I know.
But then chemistry sort of understood a lot. I think alchemy was they understood. Yeah, this is alchemy, if I understand correctly, was really unexplained chemistry. But then once chemistry sort of happened, then I understood the properties of all the elements, and then it was more like a chemical reaction rather than something magic. It became clearer to me. Here, we're literally talking about something supernatural. You follow? But the supernatural good and supernatural bad. Supernatural good, Hilchot Yetzirah. Supernatural bad is Kishuf.
One last question.
Yeah, sure.
Is I don't know, Cohen, he made like a calf. Can we consider that good or bad?
Oh, that's a different. We're not sure exactly whether it moved. The Midrash tells us of all these interesting things that the golden calf did. But based on the Torah, just on the verses, it seems it wasn't. It was just a piece of gold in the shape of a calf, rather than anything that had life to it. Okay, so we've seen so far. Just to summarize, we've looked at the pasuk that spoke about wizardry. Mechashefa lo techayeh. We spoke about the three types. Nachon. That is, we spoke about kishuf, hilchot yitzira, and then achizat einaim. Achizat einaim is optical illusions. And then we looked at the Sefer Chinuch that tried to distinguish between what is magic and what is Sefer Yetzirah. Joy? Okay. Now, I want to turn a little bit to Halacha. To learn to practical Halacha. Really our way of... The only thing that really exists nowadays is optical illusions. I know it sounds, maybe I'm too much of a skeptic, but I don't think that other people, even in very interesting parts of the world, I think they're just very good at optical illusions. I don't think there is anyone today doing anything like what Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Yoshia did, creating a cow and then shechting it. I think what we see today is optical illusions. Assuming that is what we see today, if you remember the Gemara told us that is patur, you are exempt from punishment, but it's forbidden. So we're going to discuss the development of the halacha primarily about optical illusions, because that's really the magic that we have today. And unfortunately, we'll come to a machloket nowadays among the rabbis, even until today. Some say you are allowed to go to magic shows, and as we'll see, there are others who really, even until today, see it as a problem. Okay, so we're going to start with the Shulchan Aruch. It's on source number 6. I have all these sheets. They were a pile, but they're not there anymore. But I'm reading them here. If anyone wants, I will send it to you immediately after the share. But I'm on source number 6. This is in Yoredeh, Siman Kuf Ayin Tet, chapter 179, paragraph 15. So the Shulchan Aruch, really based on what we saw in the Gemara, says, Ochez et ha'inaim, somebody who is involved in optical illusions, asur, it is forbidden, meaning anything that looks like magic is forbidden. Al yadei sefer yitzira mutar, afilu la'asot ma'aseh. But if I'm using, and that's what we're talking about, this book of creation, Sefer Yetzirah, combining letters and creating things, that is permitted because I'm working within the system. You follow? When I do an optical illusion, I'm trying to make you think that I'm doing something which is asur min, in the Torah. You follow? That's why it's a problem. It's a bit like lahavdil 1,000 times. Like I'm having a cornflakes, a milk, but it looks like I'm eating bacon. You follow? Mm-hmm. So that's forbidden. I haven't done anything wrong, but it looks like I'm doing something wrong. So because real magic is wrong, and the better the illusionist I am, the more you think I'm doing magic. So therefore I'm trying to show you that I'm doing something which is wrong, and therefore it is wrong for me to do that.
But everyone knows that it's an illusion. No
Michael, oh my gosh. Well, yes, you're right.
I mean, the idea is suspension of disbelief. You want to think it's magic because that makes it more exciting.
Right.
Right.
So
everyone's like, it's just a trick.
So that is exactly the debate. Yeah. What are you going to say, David?
Nowadays we have like movies and all that kind of stuff. Would it be considered an optical illusion because it's not actually like we see it on the screen? It's not actually happening like in front of our eyes.
Oh no! I don't think so. No, cause like magic is about making things appear and disappear. What's disappearing?
Make it disappear.
But that How do you do that?
Yeah,
No,
magic.
no, but I think like literally something, not like on a screen. I think it's talking about, like there's no cup here and then the cup appears. That sort of stuff. Okay, so if we have a look at the Bet Yosef, as you know, the Bet Yosef was written by the author of the Shulchan Aruch, and in it, he really goes into depth on the history of whatever halacha he's discussing. So, we saw the bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch, that optical illusions are a problem, and then the halachic background for that decision is on source number 7. The Bet Yosef also, it's on the Torah, it's in Yoredeh, chapter 179, and the Bet Yosef, the modern Bet Yosef also have paragraphs, so it's paragraph number 15. Katav Rabbeinu Yerucham, Da'al Yidei Sefer Yetzirah, Zeu Ma'aseh Shedim, Ad Kan Lashona, V'ta'ud hu biyado, Ela Shemot HaKodesh Hem, U'komo shekatav Rabbeinu, B'samuch B'shem Rabbeinu Yeshaya, V'chein Perush Rashi, B'sof Perek Abba Mitot, Ahad Rabbi Chanin, Rabbi Oshia, Kol Mini Shavta Avi Alski B'ilchot Yetzirah, U'mivri Luhu Igra Tilta, V'achlilei, Aske B'ilchot Yetzirah, U'mela Ivri Luhu Igla Tilta, Alidei Shayu Mitzarfim Otiyot. You see, these rabbis, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yoshia, were creating by joining letters together. Shebaraman with another Ein Kan Mishum Kishuf. There's no magic going on here. Ella Maaseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Yedei Shem Kedusha Shelo Ad Kan. It's really, I'm just tapping into God's energy. Or sort of, this is how God creates. I'm not going against God's will, but I'm working within the system that God created. You follow? Miu efshar litchok v'lefresh divrei Rabbeinu Yerucham delo atel meima da'alidei sefer yitziru ahave maaseh shedim mamash ela lomar shedino v'din maaseh shedim shavim lomar d'maaseh shedim shari ki heichidi shari alidei sefer yitzira chutivrei harav Eliezer k'mo shekatav sheyavo b'samuch. Okay.
Is it talking about demons here?
Yes.
Wait, what are they saying about it?
He's saying that Rabbeinu Yerucham suggests that Sefer Yetzirah uses demons.
Oh, wow.
And
And that's permissible or what?
Exactly. So the Bet Yosef says, doesn't matter, don't worry about that, because I'm using shadim, demons, but I'm using the demons within the system, meaning within Hilchot Yetzirah. I'm not going against the divine will. And because I'm not going against the divine will, I'm working within Ritzon Hashem, therefore it is permitted. I would add, and that's why this is a slightly complicated topic, nowadays we don't really understand demons, and we don't really understand Sefer Yetzirah, and we don't really understand Kishuf. In fact, we don't understand any of these topics perfectly nowadays. I only understand optical illusions. But it is important for me to know that the world is bigger than I think it is, and it's important for me to know that there is such a thing as magic. It exists, and that's bad. And there's also something called Sefer Yetzirah, and that's good. And even if there are demons involved, if I'm bringing letters of the Torah together in order to create something, that's fine. Those are the words of the Bet Yosef. Okay. Okay, the Shach says it's in source number 8 it's really absolutely fine. It's not, Sefer Yetzirah is not a problem. Okay. I think so far everything, however clear it could be, it is clear. I understand that there is a concept of Sefer Yetzirah, that's good. I understand there is a concept of Kishuf, and that's bad. Joy? Okay. Now what about modern magic shows? So we're going to look at 2 sources. One of them is Igrot Moshe in the volume 4 of Yoredeh, question number 13. It's quite short. He answers lots of little questions in one go, and this is one of the examples. But inyan achizat einayim. Am I allowed to do an optical illusion? Okay. here, this is really, I think, what Michael was saying earlier. Shayach rak ladun lahatir. It is permitted to do magic. Leinyonei achizat enim al had. 1 second. Oh, because everybody knows. Shiyeh yadua umufursam shu mitzat kalut hatnuah v'chadome. Everybody knows that it's not magic. I want to believe that it's magic, but I know, and he knows that it isn't. You follow? Shehu Maaseh Tiv'i. I'm just working within nature. V'lo shayach lichshafim. It's really got nothing to do with magic at all. You follow? Let's say they're children that get blown away by this and they think that this person has got supernatural powers. So he says, I don't think that's the case, says Rav Moshe Feinstein. He says he thinks children get excited by this person. They get blown away for them. But first of all, they know there are lots of other magicians, and the guy might be good at what he does. But even the children, they might be excited because of his jokes or because of stuff he does. But even children inside know that he's just a magician. Even children know that he's not really a supernatural person. And there's no child that would, lose something one day and then the following day go running to a magician to see if he can create a new one. They understand that it's purely an optical illusion. Does that make sense to you, Joy? I will tell you that about a long time ago, oh my gosh, many years ago, when our children were little, we went to a magic show. It was beautiful, but the magic show was geared towards religious people. And in fact, this is the first time I came towards this Rav Moshe Feinstein, and then having sought that's how I came to look at all the other sources that we've looked at today. The magician began with this teaching of Rav Moshe Feinstein, and said to us, the parents, and to all the children, no, I'm just like you. I spent the last 6 months, moving my hand like this, or doing that like that, or making you look there, and then I'm doing something over there. It's all tricks. The only is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I suppose he wanted to cover his bases, because the only reason why it would be permitted to go to a magic show is because we believe everybody knows. You follow? So this magician felt the best way for everybody to know is to tell you. Yes, Eov.
There are some magics, like they really have traumatic experience for the kids that go like non-Jewish. Magic like splitting people into two.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
What?
It might have like traumatic experience for the kids that are watching.
Right.
I think it's the wrong thing. Like,
oh.
to take kids into.
You're very. Let's cut you. It's a very big machloket. This Rav Moshe Feinstein. Wait, we'll come to Rav Ovadia, and you'll like what he has to say. Were you going to add something? No. Were you going to add something, David?
Yeah. So nowadays we have this technology to create what's it called, deep fake, like deep fake videos, deep fake pictures, deep fake voices even. Where does that?
What? I don't know what that is.
Deep fake. It's like computer generated pictures that look like real pictures or like real humans. They can even make them move.
My gosh,
like
that's crazy.
basically on the screen you have a person who can make him look like, I don't know, Trump.
That's
and
just
give
crazy.
him the voice like Trump and he talks like Trump. Like, this is what exists now.
Really, that's
And they
very scary.
Affected even more.
Why are you scaring the rock?
I'm sorry, no, it's related to
It's on my computer.
No. That's I'm not sure.
It is like, it's trickery as well. It's like a big illusion.
Yeah, so
Technology illusion.
trickery does seem to be a problem. If I don't know, then it's a problem. Let me conclude, and you'll be happy, and you'll also be happy, with the words of Rav Ovadia, who lived just down the road from where we are right now. Rav Ovadia Yosef, who was asked, are you allowed at a wedding? Sometimes people do this at a wedding, in addition to the band and everyone else, to get a magician, to go around the tables to do some magic. Can you invite a magician to a wedding? And through working quickly and, safe of hand, is that the word? It looks like he's really doing magic, but actually he's just doing stuff quickly. And the purpose of it is to entertain the guests. Now, do you know what he says, Rav? Let me just read the bottom line. We won't read. He looks at our Gemara, and he extends from the Gemara. If you remember, in the Gemara we said there are three categories. Category number one is permitted, that is Sefer Yetzirah. Category number two is absolutely forbidden, that is Kishuf. Category number three, Ochezet Ha'inam. Do you remember what we said? Asur is forbidden.
Wait, what? You said it's what?
Optical illusions are forbidden,
right.
but they're not punishable. So Rav Ovadia takes that at its face value. To trick somebody with an optical illusion is forbidden. I feel so guilty. I put an optical illusion on the sheet. Whoops. Okay, look at this. So he said, I believe that it will be forbidden to be involved in this, even at a wedding. There's nothing that you're allowed to do because it's l'samech chatan v'kala that otherwise you would not be allowed to do. And let's just conclude. Achizat einayim, to be involved in optical illusions, even if you're just doing it in moving your hands quickly, and there's no magic at all, asur min Torah, it's forbidden by the Torah. V'asur lasot ken gam b'simchat chatan v'kala v'chadome. You're never allowed to do it. He says the rabbis were very clear when they said you're not allowed to do optical illusions, and they didn't seem to indicate that everyone knows it's an optical illusion, it's permitted. The rabbis were very clear in the Gemara and Sanhedrin that said that an optical illusion is forbidden. Now, it's interesting because I think, certainly in England, most people follow Rav Moshe Feinstein. Many religious people would not even think that there would be a halachic problem with magic. But based on the Torah, Mechashefa lo techayeh, no one would have thought that verse over here, like talking about sorcerers, would ever, go down through the Gemara, which says Achizat Einayim is forbidden, would go down to say that you're not allowed to do that nowadays. It could be. It's a very, very, rough thing to say. But Rav Moshe Feinstein, as you know, was a rabbi in America. Rav Ovadia Yosef was a rabbi in Israel. Rav Moshe Feinstein was Ashkenazi, and Rav Ovadia was Sfaradi. It could be that the influences of your traditions, the influences of the Sephardi traditions, the life in Israel, which is perhaps more innocent, less sophisticated, and therefore, like optical illusions, could really, could have a greater power, and that's why he kept away from magic. And Rav Moshe Feinstein lived in New York, which is like the skeptics of the world. In Chutz La'aretz, and maybe it could be that he saw Achizat Einayim less seriously than the way that Rav Ovadia saw it. In my experience, I haven't really studied it at depth, it's only anecdotal, but most people I know would not hesitate to watch magic. I think that the Jewish community seems to follow Rav Moshe Feinstein more than they follow Rav Ovadia Yosef, and in general, they do involve themselves in Achizat Einayim. People do involve themselves in moving their hands around quickly. Although there is a large community that follow Rav Ovadia and they keep away. Okay, I'm just going to summarize in 2 sentences. We looked at the Torah that talks about wizardry, sorcery. Torah, first of all, it's good for us to know that it exists. It's good for us to know that it exists because the world is bigger than we think it is. The stuff that happens that we don't see, and it's good for us to acknowledge that the world is much bigger than me. It's good for my humility. I think I know everything. Understand that the world is much bigger than me. So that's the first value. Then we spoke about Mechashefa versus Hilchot Yetzirah. It's difficult for us to understand these concepts because we don't really have either of them nowadays. But one of them is sort of working with, putting holy letters together and working within God's system. And Kishuv, magic, is created something outside of God's system, a bit like crossbreeding, which we know is forbidden, and that's why Sefer Yetzirah is permitted, kishuv is forbidden, and then in the middle there's achizat einayim. I'm drawn to it, but I'm only drawn to it because it looks like that. You follow? Meaning achizat einayim, optical illusions look like magic. So therefore, if it's all about looking like magic and magic is forbidden, so it makes sense for optical illusions to be forbidden too. But we really go more like Rav Moshe Feinstein, like you were saying earlier. I know it isn't, but I want to like suspend. Yeah, exactly. Suspension of disbelief, and I want to just for a few minutes to believe that I'm seeing something supernatural. But of course, I and everyone else knows that it isn't.
Oh, if people are suspending disbelief for a few seconds and think that maybe he's actually doing magic, then that would fall under. I think that's kind of why that's why Rabbi says like that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
However, when you watch the magic show, you're like, wait, what's he doing? I know he's doing something. You know. And that's the sentiment among everyone there, and that's the way people view the magic show. Then I feel like that's Moshe Feinstein's way.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think that these are probably the more popular.
I have a question about Kalayim. If you're not allowed to do Kalayim yourself, grafting or crossbreed, but you're allowed to benefit from it, it doesn't seem like a very obvious loophole. Okay, if I want to eat this interesting fruit, I'll just hire a goy to do it. You know what?
I see what you mean.
It's like an obvious loophole. Like, what's the point of? If you could say, hey, fine, if you're not allowed to benefit from it at all, you're not allowed to eat it. It's one thing. I can't do it, but I'll get a goy to do it, and then I'll enjoy the fruits.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the good question.
Like grapefruit, grapefruit is cross.
Yeah.
Really?
But is it just that?
I wonder why it's disgusting.
No, it's not grapes. That would be funny though.
If
No
someone
grapes involved.
Sorry, no, just your question is a good question. Yeah, but it could be the Torah wants to lechaded that the problem is the creation. The result is less, perhaps.
The creation.
I'm
Yes.
just, connecting to the.
Oh, good.
question,
Oh, brilliant. With an answer.
I don't know. Maybe this is just my own perception. So it says that, let's say, for example, if you hire someone like assassin to kill someone, you're
Ooh.
still liable for it. Like if a person wants to kill another person, he hires like an assassin, and the assassin will kill the person.
Right.
It's still on the killer is still the person who. Same.
It could be that that in Halacha you can talk about a process and a result. Let's say, with an assassin, I'm interested in the result. Do you know what I mean? Like you can do it however you like, but I'm interested in the result. That Charlie should be gone. You follow?
Yeah.
So if I do it or you do it, doesn't make a difference because the problem is the result. So it doesn't matter if I directly cause a result or if I indirectly cause a result, but the result is achieved anyway. So therefore, I would be liable even if I sent an assassin.
Yeah.
I love your example, but in the fruit, it's not that I want to create a fruit. It's the process. The problem with the fruit is not the result that I'm creating a grapefruit. The problem is that I'm taking a seed of A and I'm blending it with seed B. You follow? Like it could be that a fruit will come out, but the problem is not the fruit. The problem is the process. And therefore, the person who's involved in the process is the person that did something wrong, rather than the result of the process.
Halacha. If I shoot a gun at somebody and it totally misses, there's no issue with that, no problem.
Oh no, Gemara talks about that. I think in Makot and perhaps other places too. No, of course that's a problem.
No, he didn't. Let's say he didn't even know it was a gun. He totally whizzed by his head. He didn't even notice it.
No, but come on, let's say you pulled it, assuming there's a bullet, and turns out there's no bullet.
Yeah, something like that. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think the gun is loaded and it's totally empty.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's probably not the good thing to
Obviously not. I'm saying like the result. We're talking about the result, right? The problem is the murder.
Yes.
Considered,
so the truth is that in Halacha there is a difference between machshava and maaseh, meaning the plan. When I plan to do something wrong, but I never actually did it, I'm not punished. The opposite, but
you tried.
Because it's did you sin or did you not? I didn't manage to do it. But just to tell you how wonderful it is to be part of our nation, in the other way round, if I plan to do something good and I didn't manage, So then you get it's just as if I managed.
But wait, when in Bava Kama it says that a mazik has no all damages. What's the word for it?
Adam mu'ad le'olam.
Not only that, but like he's always moed. Yeah, he's always moed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So how does that work?
No, that means if I do something inadvertently, like if I doesn't quite have if I like roll off a roof and land on you or something like that, or
Yeah.
I'm like sunbathing on the roof and then I roll off the roof and I land on your cow and the cow doesn't do so well as a result.
Yeah.
So that's not my fault. I mean, I had no intention. I was fast asleep. It was just like, but I am liable. Adam mu'ad le'olam because I'm liable for my actions. But I think with that we'll pause only because the questions are getting interesting, but further away from our topic. And the topic was wonderful and it was clear and it's been an honor to learn with all of you. Yishar koach, yishar koach.